What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, aka Unique Mazique, the hardest working man in sports and gaming. I'm a fight guy, a Forbes contributor, and I also write for Heavy.com. We're talking UFC 249. We are in the mid-level prelims. I have broken down every single fight for the entire UFC 249 card. We're going through one fight at a time. If you want to see the other predictions for this particular card, upper right corner, you can see that sliver there, and it'll show you a playlist for all of the odds preview and predictions pieces. Let's jump into this one, which is the featured fight on the mid-level prelims. Anthony Showtime Pettis against Donald Cowboy Cerrone. A lot of people are going to make the argument that this one should have been on the main card and that Yorgan De Castro versus Greg Hardy fight shouldn't have been. I don't make the card arrangements or the fight schedules or whatever, but I can certainly understand why somebody would say that. So let's go to the odds that come courtesy of Bet Online. Anthony Pettis is a slight favorite, minus 138 over a plus 118 for Donald Cowboy Cerrone. You know what I'm going to tell you guys? You know how, you just stay with me for a second. If any of you guys are WWE fans, you are familiar with what we call a retirement match, right? So in WWE or in professional wrestling, guys or girls will have a match, and it's usually two, veterans who've been around a long time, and they'll have a match that says the loser has to leave the WWE. Your loser has to leave WCW. Loser has to retire. It's a career match. If there was a UFC equivalent of that concept, it almost feels like this should be a career match, because let's look at the last few fights, and I don't mean to say that as any sort of insult or disrespect to either of these two guys. I love Donald Cowboy Cerrone and Anthony Showtime Pettis. They have delivered so many outstanding fights. I mean, over the years, it's just countless solid fights. I mean, they even had a entertaining fight themselves back in 2013, which is just amazing that was 7 years ago when they met. So I love both of these guys, but you just got to look at the tread that is on both guys' tires, and you got to wonder how much longer is this going to continue on. So let's look at the last three fights, and we're going to get to Cerrone in a second. We're talking about Anthony Pettis right now. He's 1-2 in his last three fights. He pulled out a victory against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson back in March of 2019. The one-hitter quitter, bouncing off the cage, coming back at him with a Superman punch of sorts, drops Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, knocks him out cold, wins the fight. Amazing ending, performance of the night. Shows that Pettis still has the ability to summon something up when he needs to. But his next two fights didn't go as well. He lost a unanimous decision to Nate Diaz. That was a really competitive, super bloody fight. Could have gotten some sort of performance bonus for it, but they didn't get it. But it was a heck of a fight. Then he turns and loses by submission, a rear naked choke to Diego Ferreira. Now, Diego Ferreira is a heck of a fighter who is seemingly like a bit of a late bloomer. But if you're Anthony Pettis, you got to be thinking like, okay, I'm a former UFC lightweight champion. I've done some great, fantastic things in this sport. At one point in time, I wouldn't have been losing to Diego Ferreira, but I just did. So you got to think of things turning, in his head. And so I think this fight with Cerrone is a smart one. So if we look at Cerrone's last three fights, they're all losses, and they're all losses by stoppage, which is very concerning. So you go back to June of 2019, UFC 238 in my hometown in Chicago. I was there for the fight against Tony Ferguson. That's the fight where Donald Cerrone probably gets his nose broken, or at least somewhat damaged. He makes the mistake of blowing his nose, and I believe it was his right eye just blew up so crazy it looks like somebody's butt. So it was huge, and ultimately the fight had to end up being stopped. And he was losing the fight. Make no mistake, there was no third round. He had gotten beaten up through the first two rounds. Tough fight, though, obviously. We're talking about Tony Ferguson. He's headlining this card we're talking about right now. Next fight just so happens against the guy Tony Ferguson's headlining against Justin Gaethje. First round stoppage. Donald Cerrone loses this fight as well. Not a pretty one. Not competitive at all. He got mauled. The next fight, he fights Conor McGregor. So here's the thing about Donald Cerrone. He keeps fighting these killers, right? And he's losing first round, second round, just being battered. So what happens is, because of the level of competition that he's losing to, you can say, oh, well, hey, these are respectable losses. He's lost to Ferguson. He's lost to Gaethje. He got knocked out Conor McGregor in 40 seconds. It makes sense. That's what you can say. And you can even say, hey, before that, he beat Ally Aquinta. Before that, he beat Alexander Hernandez when everybody thought Alexander Hernandez was going to be that dude. Before that, he beats Mike Perry, who everybody respects because of his toughness and blah, blah, blah. All of that said, 3 brutal early knockouts, or 3 stoppages, in the way that Donald Cerrone has taken them in his mid to late 30s. He just made 37 years old. Those are significant. And it makes me wonder whether or not, or what Donald Cerrone we're getting. Because think about this. The McGregor fight was just in January. So we're talking about a less than 4-month turnaround for this. So yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. So we're gonna so if you're gonna ask whose arrow is trending up or down, I don't think either of their arrows is trending down. It's trending upward. But if we're really looking at it completely, maybe there's a little bit of slant to Pettis' arrow that's not pointing directly south. Maybe he's southwest, but Donald Cerrone right now is deep south. And that has to be definitely has to be concerning. So let's talk about the statistical breakdown, which some of this is a little shaky because some of it's early career stuff or whatever. But from the tail of the tape, it is what it is. Cerrone's the taller man, 6'1". Pettis is 5'10". The reach is almost exactly the same. Cerrone's is 73 inches. Pettis is 72 inches. Now, these guys, like I said, did meet before back in 2013. Anthony Pettis won that fight. Spectacular kick knockout. It was a body shot. Cerrone's always had some issues taking body shots. It's kind of almost Matt Brownish with the way he takes the body shots. And this was Pettis when Pettis was just that guy. He was flying at a whole nother level at this point. But this was, like I said, 7 years ago. So he won that fight. So obviously it gives him a little bit of an edge going into this one, which would make you think maybe he would be even a bigger favorite. But it is what it is. Looking at strikes landed per minute, Cerrone is much higher there, 4.3 to 2.97, just a shade under 3 for Pettis. The strike accuracy is actually the same. Both of them are right at 46%. Strikes absorbed. Both of these guys take some shots. Pettis 3.4, just under 3.5. Cerrone disturbing 4.27 strikes absorbed per minute. That starts to add up. Their defense is about the same. Both of them evade about 53% of the shots thrown at them. If the fight goes to the ground, both of these guys are very good on the ground. They both have underrated, I think, Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills. They both can finish you down there. They both can handle themselves on the ground. But both of their bodies have started to show a little bit of that wear and tear, to the point where we're seeing Pettis get injured during grappling sessions, not sessions like practice, but during grappling exchanges and fights. I believe it happened against Dustin Poirier. These things are just kind of, it's just a wear and tear of being in as many wars and fights as these guys have been in. But I would say for the most part, there's somewhat of I would say they're close to even on the ground. If you're talking about stand-up, though, I still think Pettis is a little better here. I think he's still quicker. I think he still has a few more tricks in his bag in terms of the shots to land. And I think Cerrone still stands straight up and still a little bit too easy to hit. And I also think because of the finishes, I'm thinking that his chin is a little softer now. He's a little chinny at this point, and I don't think it takes as much to get him out as it once did. And because of that is why I do have to kind of agree with the odds makers here. And I actually think that these odds should probably be a little bit wider. As much as I love Donald Cerrone, as much as I respect him, if he loses this fight, especially if he's stopped, I think there needs to be some serious recommendations from people to say, hey, Donald, you're a UFC Hall of Famer. You've done tons for this sport. You've done tons, period. It might be about that time. If he loses his fight, even if he doesn't get knocked out, if he takes all kinds of punishment for 3 rounds, it's really, you gotta wonder. I mean, we're talking about 3 straight brutal losses in a row. This would be a 4th if things go the way I think they may go. You have to have some serious conversations about that. But my official prediction for this one is Anthony Showtime Pettis gets the victory by a 2nd-round TKO, and he goes on and gets the win and moves his record in the last 4 fights to 2-2, which pretty much probably gives him an opportunity to have another fight himself. So I appreciate you guys watching. As always, don't forget, hit that subscribe and that notification bell. Like the video as well. God bless and peace.